We're a little behind. Our next guest is the only man in the world who can pull off a pink mustache. Please welcome to the stage Logan Green from Lyft and Ryan Lawler.
All right. So thanks for joining us, and congratulations on announcing your presidential bid. I was wondering where you stood on the legalization of marijuana.
It's an issue that's dear to my heart. And I think now is the time the country's ready.
Okay. Good to know. So you joined us for Disrupt San Francisco about 18 months ago. At that point, you were in about 10 markets. Maybe give us an update on what's happened since then for the people who are waiting for Carly Fiorina to get up here.
Okay, so in the last 18 months, if your only news source has been us speaking at TechCrunch Disrupt, in the last 18 months, we launched a bunch of cities. We're in 65 markets. The team has grown a lot, over 400 people. We've brought on a phenomenal executive team in the last 6 months. We brought on a CMO, COO, VP of Engineering, VP Product, VP Partnerships, VP Communications, built out an incredible executive team, and we've grown to be tens of thousands of drivers across the country doing millions of rides every month.
Okay, so when you've expanded to 65 markets, but I feel like watching this, you ramped up really, really fast for about 18 months, and then now you're kind of holding steady, at least in terms of going into new markets. Why is that? What's the strategy behind that?
Yeah, so it was really important for us to be in all key markets across the U.S., and so we launched as fast as possible, and we had a really unique strategy for launching, where we would use our top drivers in every market to onboard new drivers. So we consider our top drivers mentors, and when somebody new applies, they meet one of our top drivers, go through the process to become a new Lyft driver, and that allowed us to launch cities extremely quickly. We got to all key 65 markets, and now we're really focused on going deep rather than going broad. So as a Lyft user, I care that Lyft is going to be in any city that I travel to, but more than that, I care about the level of service and the number of products offered in any city. So our goal with Lyft was never to create just a better taxi cab, right? Our goal was to create a legitimate alternative to car ownership. And so about 6 months ago in San Francisco, which is our largest market, we launched a new service called Lyft Line. And Lyft Line is now live in New York, LA, and Austin as well. And with Lyft Line, we're matching up 2 or more passengers who are heading along a similar route. And it can be up to 50% off.
Right.
And so with services like Lyft Line, that's where we're going deeper, and we're able to provide transportation for more types of trips. We don't want Lyft just to be the service that you use once a month when you need a ride to the airport. We want to be part of people's lives, twice a day, every day, an indispensable piece of their life.
Okay, so but to talk about your expansion thing, just to talk about that a little bit more, and then we'll talk about Lyft Line and all the product stuff. You have investment from some foreign strategics like Alibaba and Rakuten.
Yeah.
So why not international? Why hasn't that been a part of your plan, and does that change?
Yes, I think we were extremely fortunate when Alibaba participated in our previous round of financing, and then Rakuten led our most recent round of financing, the $500 million round. And both have been incredible partners.
But partners doing what? I mean, if they're not helping you get into those markets.
Yeah, so they're helping us with our international strategy. We didn't take the investment with an explicit commitment to necessarily launch Lyft in those countries. But it's a very intriguing opportunity, and it's something we may do. But right now, our focus is what I was talking about earlier about going deep rather than broad.
Okay. So how would that work internationally? Because it doesn't seem like it's working that well in particular markets like China or India for Uber?
Right. I think you're very right, and that's a story that's actually not told very often. But there are local players that are very dominant. So in China, you have Didi. In India, you have Ola. In Southeast Asia, you have Grab Taxi. In Latin America, you have 99 Taxis and Easy Taxi. And so there's a huge local component to this service. And you're seeing these local dominant players emerge around the world. And they've actually raised, extremely, large amounts of capital. So a couple $1 billion have gone into the Chinese companies. Close to $1 billion has gone into India. And so we don't want to show up as an outsider and just bring the Lyft-style service to those other countries, but we may find ways to work together.
Okay. Back to the product stuff, you mentioned Lyft Line, and recently you've been doing this thing called hotspots. And so the idea is a customer will pay a standard amount of money and stand in a designated spot, and they'll get picked up and dropped off. Wasn't that basically a bus?
Yeah. So hotspots are like virtual bus stops. So we picked, this is an experiment we're doing in San Francisco. We don't know if it's going to work yet or not, but it's an exciting concept. So what we did in San Francisco is we picked 100 hotspots. So in downtown, sort of central San Francisco, you can, anywhere you are in the city, you're less than a 4-minute walk away from a hotspot, usually about 2 blocks. And so if you move your pin and set your pickup spot at one of these hotspots, it's like a bus stop. You see people now pooling on certain corners in San Francisco. We also put hotspots at each of the large transit stations. So the Caltrain station, the BART stations, each have hotspots so that Lyft Line can be a sort of last mile transportation solution. And the idea is when you move a lot of people to the same pickup spot, you can actually get more efficient routes. So you're not detouring to pick up other passengers. You're going directly from one hotspot to your drop-off with 2 or 3 people in the car. And this is part of where we're taking the market. We will keep pushing the price point down as low as possible so that it can be a legitimate alternative to owning and using your own car.
Okay, or a legitimate alternative to public transportation.
Or a legitimate alternative or augmentation in the case of the last mile to public transportation.
Okay. Philosophically, though, I mean, do you think it's a good idea for a private enterprise like yours to be considered a replacement for municipal transportation like buses or other services? Yeah.
So my background is actually in public transportation. I was on the board of a public transit district for about 3 years. And Lyft was born out of that frustration with the limitations around public transportation systems. So public transportation systems have very limited subsidy, and they're completely dependent on that subsidy to offer service. And because of the funding dynamics and the political dynamics, public transportation is not improving across the US. And so this sort of engine for growth and engine for improvement had to come from somewhere else, and that's what we're trying to bring with Lyft and with Lyft Line. And the way we look at the world is 5% of people take public transit to work every day, 90+% drive in a car. And so the world is really, you either own a car and use your car for every trip, or you're in the world of alternatives. And if you're in the world of alternatives, they all complement each other. So better bike lanes, better public transit service, Zipcar, Lyft, they all work better together. If there's a stronger menu of alternatives, you're more likely to give up your car. And there have been countless studies done that show once you do give up your car, you use all of those alternatives more. So there might be the occasional person who chooses to use Lyft Line instead of taking the bus. But the majority of people who are using it are choosing to take Lyft Line instead of owning a car at all.
Okay. But still going along that line of logic, the public transportation thing, couldn't Lyft line be seen as discriminatory against lower income people or against people with special needs that are serviced by the public transit system?
Lyft line doesn't take it all away from great public transit systems, and it works best in cities that already have really strong public transit systems. So I don't think it discriminates or takes away from anything. I think it augments existing systems and allows more people to use them.
Okay. I was talking to a guy the other day, and he said that you are probably the nicest person he's ever met. But don't nice guys finish last?
So I think there's been a bit of conversation about Lyft being the nice guy, and I think it's true, but it's a sort of fundamental part of our culture. We, the company culture is about being human and about being good to other people, and you feel that experience in that culture every time you get in a Lyft. We recently did a survey of our drivers. We did a random sample of 50 drivers that drove both for us and our competition. And we asked them, which service do you prefer driving for? 48 out of the 50 said they preferred driving for Lyft. And the number one reason they did was because passengers were friendlier and treated them better. So that friendliness, that being nice, is actually, I think, our core strength. It's what we're good at, and it's what we plan to continue to use as our advantage.
Okay, but personally, just as a genuinely nice guy, and I've known him for a while, and he is a really nice guy, how do you beat the guy with that crazy win at all costs mentality? And you know who I'm talking about.
So we're nice, but we're also ferocious competitors. It's extremely competitive. We have an extremely competitive team. We have extremely performance driven, and we are out to fulfill. Our goal isn't to compete with Uber. Our goal is to create a legitimate alternative to car ownership, and we are ferociously pursuing that mission, and we'll do whatever it takes to accomplish that. And I think that you can do that, and that it's actually a sort of fundamental part of our strategy to do that through creating a culture that is inclusive and celebrates people and is about being good to one another.
So the first time I met you, this was about 2.5, 3 years ago. It was at the launch of Lyft, and at that time you had about 20 employees, I think, 15 to 20. Now you've got 400 all over the U.S. As an entrepreneur and as a young entrepreneur, first-time entrepreneur, how have you changed personally and professionally as you go through that journey?
Yeah, so my co-founder, John Zimmer, and I started the company originally 8 years ago. We were a couple years out of school, had very minimal professional experience. We're extremely passionate about this idea. Started the company originally as Zimride back in 2007, going after this big idea. And the idea and the vision, for creating a transportation network to replace car ownership hasn't changed since the beginning. Luckily, in a lot of ways, the first idea we picked with Zimride was sort of a web-based carpooling system. Didn't take off the way Lyft did. And we fought like crazy for every inch of growth that we had. And we built it into a modest company with about 20 people, a couple $1 million a year in revenue. It was a decent small business, but we hadn't had that kind of breakthrough success that we were looking for, and we hadn't made the impact on the world that we wanted to. But those 5.5 years that we had building the company pre-Lyft, I think that was like weight training. It was in a lot of ways harder than anything we've had to do with Lyft. As soon as we launched Lyft mid-2012, it took off like nothing we had seen before. It was that product market fit that every entrepreneur is looking for. And I think the sort of preceding 5 years really sort of gave us a lot of the training that we needed to be prepared for this experience. If this hit on day one, I don't know that we would have been prepared for the scale.
And so I'm just kind of wondering, like, you've created a whole bunch of jobs, for contractors, 1099 people, which is great if you don't need insurance or retirement benefits. But as a guy who's genuinely nice, how do you think about that? And think about, the services that are available to, the thousands of drivers that you have across the U.S.
Yeah, so I think the nature of work is changing a lot, and there's a term I heard recently that flexibility is the new stability, and most people aren't picking one career, one employer, and staying in a job for the next 30 years and retiring on a pension plan. People are, more and more people are going after their dreams, pursuing, careers as, artists, as musicians, as entrepreneurs, and going off and doing what they want to do at all costs. And Lyft provides a phenomenal platform for people, whether they're in between jobs or they're pursuing their passion to make money and pay the bills, and to get by as they go after what they're truly passionate about. We did a survey of drivers in LA, and over 50% worked in a creative industry. So when you're an actor and you've got to drop everything to go on an audition, you can't have a 9-to-5. You can't pursue your dreams and still, be chained to your desk. And with Lyft, you have ultimate flexibility. You sign out of driver mode, you hop out, you go to that audition, and you have complete control. So it's a different type of work.
Couldn't you still do that? I mean, as W-2s, though?
It's with W-2s, you have a whole different set of requirements and expectations. When companies hire people, you expect them to work, specific hours. You put all of these requirements on how they get the job done, when they get the job done. And I don't think most of the drivers on the road want to work under those sort of strict conditions.
Okay, what about the people that are filing class action lawsuits saying they should be employees?
So there is ongoing litigation. I can't comment specifically on any of that now.
Okay, but you don't think that there's merit to that lawsuit?
No, not at all.
Okay. I guess the other thing is I just going back to the product standpoint. You also rolled out profiles, and this lets passengers and drivers know more about everyone in the car. Isn't that a little creepy?
No, so we rolled out profiles, and you can optionally fill out a couple pieces of information about yourself. You can put in something, small, like little about me. You can fill in your hometown, and if you want, you can turn Facebook Connect on, which will show you mutual friends with the driver or with fellow Lyft line passengers. So it's all totally optional, opt-in kind of thing. And the idea is, if you're interested in this, two people get in the car together. We found there's a lot of the same conversations play out. You say where you're from, how long have you been doing this? What sort of music do you like? And we thought, sort of watching a lot of these conversations play out, it takes people a while to figure out that one thing they have in common. And when they figure that out, that they're both into the same type of music, from the same hometown, know a few of the same people, all of a sudden the conversation, people light up, and the conversation gets really interesting. So the idea with profiles was to help improve the in-car experience, so that two people get in the same car, hopefully we create more of those light-up moments where people have something really interesting in common and can figure that out right off the bat.
And what about the people that just don't want to talk to the driver or other people in the car?
If you don't want to talk, you don't have to talk. No, no. I think that's a misconception about Lyft, that you have to talk. We've been, Lyft is about, being friendly and engaging as much as you want. right? But if you're tired after a long day of work, there's nothing wrong with getting in the back seat of a Lyft. You don't have to fill out your profile. You don't have to initiate a conversation. It's there for those people who are looking for it to augment the experience.
Okay. Well, thanks for joining us, and congratulations. I wish you luck in the election. Give a round of applause for Logan.
Thanks.